I think this is where some people are kind of like, well, that sounds selfish, but we have to put ourselves first many times in
Mhm.
order to be able to serve others.
Exactly. And there's nothing better than those points that Dr. Julie truly made there was what were you like when you guys first met and what were the things that you found most attractive at that time and how do you get back to those things if they're not there anymore?
If you don't have trust with that person, I don't think that you're always going to feel you won't feel vulnerable because you'll never
Right.
actually open up to that person.
Perspective. Yeah. What do females have to do every day to try to build trust in themselves? Because I think that they're super hard on themselves.
Or the headspace, the mental capacity of, I'm not good enough.
Yeah. So
Just starting to take some things off of each other's plates, or to simply say I love you, or to have that physical touch, I think is just some of those small things, because sometimes the words are really difficult to say, but your actions can also speak volumes.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Prime Podcast. I'm your host, Skip Wyss, and as always, I have the beautifully, wonderfully radiant Dr. Julie Wyss with me here today. Hi, Dr. Julie, how are you?
Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. So, Dr. Julie, over this past month, we've covered a lot about relationships. It's February, right? So we kind of went with the cliche Valentine's Day thing, but I think it's a good month to concentrate and talk about relationships and how to build our relationships both in our family, with our children, with our clients or people that are in our lives that we're doing business with every day, interacting with, or friends, and then also with our partners. That is I think, one of the hardest things that people are constantly trying to work on is relationships with their partner. But also, what it comes down to is a relationship with yourself.
Mm.
And do you actually accept yourself for who you are? Do you actually forgive yourself for problems you've had in the past? You forgive yourself for the mistakes you may have made, but also do you hold gratitude for everything you've done in your life to get you to the point of where you're at?
I think this is where some people are kind of like, well, that sounds selfish, but we have to put ourselves first many times in order to be able to serve others.
Exactly. Selfish to be selfless, right? We have to understand ourselves. We have to know who we are. We have to be happy with who we are. Well, this one, I've got my list here again today because I wanted to hit on these topics for us. But episode 4, we're talking about intimacy. We're talking about the S word that some people get really uncomfortable with, and that's okay. We're talking about sugar. That's right. Trying to get sugar. Vulnerability with your spouse, and then deepening connections. Because this is something that I think both sides, vulnerability wise, leads to really an understanding of trust. And it all boils down to trust. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I think it's, if you don't have trust with that person, I don't think that you're always going to feel you won't feel vulnerable because you'll never actually open up to that person.
Building trust is one of the hardest things in a relationship. Like, you can slowly build it. Like, do I pick you up on time for dates? Do I do things on time? Do I not let you down? Those are all things, but you can also break trust with yourself. I think that is the first thing we need to work on, is how do we slowly build trust with ourselves so then we can start trusting the people around us.
Well, I think it's with everything. Like, you could do something right 100 times, and then that one time you make a mistake for your partner or for yourself, and then that's the only thing that you remember.
Yeah, that you constantly, because you let yourself down. And you should be the first person to forgive yourself, is you, because you're human. You make mistakes. In fact, you live in your head every day since you were born. You've been inside your head thinking. And in fact, as an infant inside your mom, you were probably thinking then too, putting things together. But letting yourself down is one of those easy things. Like, I've let myself down a lot where I don't follow through with myself. And what I mean by that is accomplishing the daily tasks that you do every day to build trust for yourself first. Like, if you take vitamins, did you take all your vitamins in the morning? Did you take your vitamins in the afternoon? In fact, when we were in a workshop with Michael Chandler over a year ago, we were talking about resiliency, and he said in order to build trust back with himself, he made an agreement to make sure that he took his vitamins in the morning and at night. This is a world-class championship fighter for the UFC and for Bellator. Like, this guy is the top of the world, and he still has trust issues with himself. And he said in order to build his trust back, he needed to not let himself down on a simple task, which was taking vitamins every day.
Mm-hmm.
He even said that there was a few nights where he was like in bed with his wife, and he shot out of bed to go take his vitamins. And Bree was like, "What are you doing?" And he said, I need to take my vitamins. And he came back to bed then after. But he wasn't going to break that simple thing. So I think step one is pick out one small thing that you can agree to do every day to start building trust and confidence back in yourself.
For yourself.
Mm-hmm. Because when we look at women, finding men attractive, one of the most outstanding traits, besides humor and funniness, is their confidence in who they are. That is the guy that comes in and owns the room, or can be confident in who he is, be confident in himself, and that's what women find attractive. But if you can't trust yourself, then how do you keep confidence? Would you agree with that?
I would agree.
So from your perspective, what do females have to do every day to try to build trust in themselves? Because I think that they're super hard on themselves.
I think lots of the male stuff can be more physical related.
Mm.
And I think for women, I think it's more the headspace, the mental capacity of I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
Or
So,
I'm not worth it.
right. So what can women do? Like, you're good at it. Like, you're
Yeah,
good
so
at
I,
talking
I
about
think it's,
self-worth and who you are.
reading your Bible, reading a gratitude journal, actually every day making a list of what thing you're thankful for, or like what is one thing that you want to do to help somebody else. But before you can do that, okay, then if you were going to say I love you to somebody, you need to say that to yourself first. So if you think of all the things maybe throughout your day that you're doing for others, well, you need to do that to yourself first.
I think, what do you think about negative self-talk? Negative self-talk is something that
Oh, it's over consuming.
men are notorious at doing. Do women do the same thing?
Of course.
So how do you think that we can change that negative self-talk then for females? Because I think men just go on to the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we'll call ourselves, like, men are actually notoriously incredibly hard on ourselves. We just talk to ourselves very negatively in our head. And what I find to reverse it is I have to literally tell myself, you did a good job at this. You did a good job at this today, Skip. You need to understand that you did good at this today.
Well, sometimes I think it sounds, it may seem cheesy or sound silly, but, putting affirmations up or putting like you're worth it, like on your mirror, having sticky notes around, like if you're a stay-at-home mom and, you're doing the dishes or you're looking out the window, those things that you frequent, like, so see like what your path is throughout the day. Where's the carpet wore down? But put those notes everywhere for yourself to see them. And what this does, if you have children, they're going to start to see this as well. And we all want to raise our kids in the best manner, but really it's the mental capacity, the mental health is what's really vitally important, because that's not changing in this next couple of years. It's only going to get worse. And so if we can teach our kids to see like, well, mom, what does that mean? Or why are you putting all these notes? Well, then they can be an active participant as well. They can start making those notes and, not flashcards, but like the index cards.
Little index cards.
And like I found those, like if there's like a Bible verse that I really like that resonated with me, I'll write it in that note card, and then I will pop it into, as a bookmark in a different book, or I'll just like put it in my stuff somewhere and it's always like, it's that one time when I need to hear that, and I'll be like, oh, here's that note card, and that's exactly what I needed to hear in that moment.
Oh, well, I didn't know you did that. That's pretty awesome. And I think that's an easy area for people to grow. Or just daily affirmations, right? You used TUT for a while.
Yep.
That's the tut.com is you can get the actual affirmation sent to your phone every day. Sorry. You can get the affirmation sent to your phone every day and you can just read it. But you can also do it. There's also other applications out there that send you daily Bible verses. Like the Bible app will send you a daily inspirational Bible verse every day. So there are things that you can do. You can also set your phone. You can put a timer on your phone for an alarm every day to tell yourself you're thankful. Like it's called the gratitude timer. A lot of people have used it. It's something that they use in a lot of self-help, self-growth groups.
Set it for every 3 hours.
Set it for every 3 hours.
Start there every 3 hours. And then if that's kind of like, okay, that's doing good, but I need more, then you set it more frequently.
Okay.
And this isn't something that's going to like take away from your day, but it's just all of a sudden that chime goes off and you're like, oh, thank you. And just start saying thank you, or I love you. I love myself.
Mm-hmm.
It's those little things, because like we have so much, I think, messed up in our heads many times. And, we can talk about traumas and the things that we've been through, since we were born, and it's going to take a long time to reframe that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's where it's the repetition of constantly just telling yourself that. And over time, you'll start to actually believe it. And then it's actually going to do exactly what it needs to do.
Awesome. So I think that really will help us understand building trust with ourselves. And then from there, we can build trust with our partners. And that's where intimacy comes in. And it's not the physical side of intimacy. It's the love side of intimacy, where you let people into your world and you can trust them and talk to them. And you can start building things up, because men, we're notorious for not trusting people around us. So what we do is we keep our thoughts into ourselves, to ourselves. We keep things. And then when we do open up, if you're with somebody that actually finds humor in serious conversations, like there are parts in relationships where there's certain people that no matter how serious things get, they will start laughing. And it's a coping mechanism. And when a guy opens up to you, women out there, or wives, you need to really understand like what it took for him to say something to you, what it took for him to talk about himself, or something that he did that day, or how he let himself down, or maybe where he's looking for help. Because if he gets made fun of, if something gets a little bit too humorous for him, he'll shut down and never share with you again. He literally will not share with you again, because there is a part of psychology out there where men have best friends and so do women. And men usually keep 5 or 6 people in their circle that they can actually share everything with and not feel judged. And if men have humor back and forth with each other, that's the way that we cope with things and have fun and make fun of each other. But when it comes to serious conversations, we don't want to be judged. We just want to actually get it out there and hear what you have to say. And if you're the spouse of this guy, you should be in that tight friend circle. You should fill one of the 5. And if you don't, there's a problem, because he can't come to you with everything. And then you'll have things like, you'll say things as a spouse like, well, he's always angry all the time, or he just seems super, super mad or upset. Well, maybe he feels like he can't come to you and tell you what is truly on his mind, or what he is really upset about, or what he's nervous about. A lot of the times it's nerves. Like, can I provide for my family? Is my job going okay? Are we making enough money? Can I make sure that I can support my wife, and can I support my kids and give them what I feel they think they need? But most of the time, men don't take the time to actually figure out what their spouse needs, what the person in the relationship actually needs. So they'll view it as a material thing. And that's difficult for guys. Or if they actually get really personal with you and they say, my life is doing this. Or if a guy actually shows emotion, like he's really getting into how he feels. And if a guy usually like will cry, if something comes out, then like they're being incredibly vulnerable with you.
So what is the best? So in that position, what is the man expecting the woman to do? To just take that all in? For like, I'm trying to understand like the male psyche behind this, because if you're talking to a bunch of guys, like you're just gonna say it and you're gonna laugh it off. So you're saying then for the woman,
right.
No, you're not looking for necessarily always a response.
Not always. When men talk with men and we're trying to be super, like when we're trying to get conversation out with each other and build on each other, we can have real conversations and basically lay our stuff out. And some of the answers we give each other are very blunt and they're very to the point, but that's what builds us the most. Generally, when a guy is trying to talk to his spouse, if he's had a really supportive mom in his life, he's looking for that spouse to give that support. Tell them that you love them, Tell them that you support them, and number one thing is tell them that you're proud of them, and give him the support. Tell him that he can do anything, that you're doing a good job. That's what men really need to hear. Because I come back to this, there was this reel that went out that it was this guy, and he's sitting with this spool of wire, and it's not a humorous post. And he's looking at this spool of wire, and his wife comes out, and she's like, "Why are you crying? What's wrong with you? I thought you were working." And he's like, "I'm looking at this spool of wire, and man, I bought this spool of wire 40 years ago. And this is what's left of it." And he was telling her it was a big spool, and now it's down to just this. And it was still he had rewrapped it around this coil, and he uses it for wiring, and he's an electrician. And he goes, "I'm sitting here staring at this, and I'm thinking, this was my life on this spool, and this is what's left with it. Like little pieces I've had to give out of this day in and day out, building projects, putting things together for people." And he had just realized the metaphor in front of him, that was his entire life that he had given people. And instead of his wife holding space for that and looking at him and saying, "You're amazing at what you do. You've given a lot to people. You should be proud of yourself," she made a comment about his hat that he had on and started laughing at him and walked away. And what he said is, you immediately saw his eyes. He closed down and he said, "I can't, I just can't." And he just walks away from her. And he was actually being vulnerable. Like he was seeing what his life was in front of him and what it had come and what he had sacrificed and done. And in that moment, she made a joke, and he shut down. I don't know what then that turned into. I have no idea. But she had found humor, and she goes, "I just thought you were crying because you had your Jets hat on." And he was actually being serious in that moment. And there's been a lot of people that have analyzed that video, and you can find it out there. And I think you might even be able to put in, like in the reel, like crying Jets fan, and it probably comes up. But you can actually see the serious side of it, where that guy was actually vulnerable with his wife, and she didn't catch it. All she had to tell him was, "Hey, you're incredible. You did an amazing job with this. People are proud. Think of all the people you've helped in your life." And he could have sat there, and he probably would have went, "Huh," and then probably would have thanked his wife instead of got mad at her. Or when he shared, like if I share with you or with anybody out there, is, this is an issue for me today, or I'm having a really hard time getting past this one person. All it usually takes is the person that you love the most to put their hand on you, maybe give you a hug, because most men's love language is physical touch. Most of them are. And tell them that they're doing a good job, or that you're proud of them, or thank you for providing. Because that's the biggest thing. Because we have people out there right now who like to take these gender roles and talk about masculinity and femininity, and how men need to be more masculine and women need to be more feminine and all this stuff. Yeah, I get it. Women have had to take on more working roles and things like this. But if you don't hold space for the guy to actually get in touch with his feelings and drop away from being masculine and be somewhat feminine, you are hurting yourself and hurting your spouse.
Well, I think there's a direct correlation between the masculinity of like a man's man,
Mm-hmm.
if you look through of what type of mother that he had.
Sure.
And so that mom had that safe place to raise him with the masculinity, but to also comfort in that
Yeah.
time and tell you the great job and you're doing really well and I love you.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just the fast forwarding to now as a society to find the partner that can also, like, it's not going to be your mom, right? But to understand that upbringing of, okay, if I really want a man's man to have that masculinity, I have to also talk to them with the physical touch and the correct love language and those affirmations.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you absolutely need to.
If you're not feeling that your spouse is masculine enough, well, what does that look like?
Mm-hmm.
Does that just mean like going outside and shoveling and cutting the lawn?
Chopping some wood?
Does that mean going to the gym and putting on muscle mass? What does that masculinity mean for you? Is it just, taking charge and opening a door?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's where it again, it comes back to the vulnerability of saying, okay, I loved you when you were able to do this, and we've gotten away from that. And I think that's where, again, if we talk about,
Mm.
rekindling the romance,
Hmm.
it's what caused you to start dating to begin with.
What was the change now versus what's
And
changed since then?
correct. And so I
Ah,
think that's we become comfortable in anything that when you become comfortable, that means like stasis.
mm.
Right. And
Sedative,
so that
right?
means that things aren't getting better. They may not be getting worse, but there's no change.
Mm.
And so if you don't like where you are within your relationship, you can't be comfortable anymore. You have to step out, and that is that vulnerability. And so if you're like, we used to have a date night, we used to do this all the time. Well, then we had kids. Then you figure out a way to go back and have that date night.
Hmm.
If it's that important, like, and it's vital to save a marriage, then that's what needs to happen.
Yep.
And things will just fall into place for you to be able to do that. But that's that vulnerability of you need to speak up and say, okay, this is what I need.
I think so. So let's change this over into let's change this into physical intimacy then. So men will turn around and say they will in their 30s and 40s. I wish I had more physical intercourse with my wife. And I'll get a lot of moms in that I take care of that are like, yeah, my husband, he could have intercourse with me every day, you know, and it's a difference. I think it's a different dynamic because when men are super stressed, they're looking for physical touch and physical intimacy. When women are super stressed, they're not looking for that. So finding a balance in the two is actually super key.
Well, it's to understand, okay, that's actually what's happening within the psychology.
Hmm.
That's how the man is going to respond. So then if that's what the man wants, then he needs to figure out, okay, how can I, for whatever that looks like, take away some of that stress
Mm.
from my wife, from my
Yep.
significant other. And if that piece can start to fall into place of, well, on this day, like, it's, gosh, like Wednesdays are absolutely terrible, then figure out what you can do on that Wednesday
Mm.
to start to change that.
Yeah. Help.
Mhm.
Right. And that could be that point, guys, when if you want to get your kids, if you're raising men, if you're raising women, depends on what part in your life you want to do with that. So can you take your daughter on a date day? Can you take her out? Can you go have fun with her? Can you teach her things? Men with boys, can you get them outside and have them play? Can you get them outside and do things of a physical activity, physical nature? Yes, little girls need that too, but their body processes things differently. They process things differently. They perceive the environment differently. And we have a cool dynamic of having a boy and a girl.
Mhm.
And now seeing how they've developed and changed. I mean, our daughter's going to be 17 in May. Our son just turned 14. So now seeing how they developed, and I think it's really neat because Brecken, he has a masculine side, but he also has a very feminine side as well. And Peyton's the same way. She has a very feminine side, but she can get very masculine at times too. And I think it's a really neat dynamic because as a parent, like, I'm not out there every day doing masculine things. Like, and that you have to define what that means. I'm not out there splitting wood every day, chopping things down, building in construction, doing very masculine things. I'm helping people every day. I literally am in that role. Like, I help people every day. But they get to see then what I do when I help people, how I help the woman or the man both. Like, what can I do in both situations to empower both? And I think that they see that, and I think that they know that, and then they can start seeing how these gender roles really work. Would you agree with
Mhm.
that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and then that leads to the physical intimacy, not with the kids, but well, somewhat. I would say physical intimacy with your children is touch, being around them, holding their hand, hugging them. Total different than what you're doing with your spouse. And you can build these really strong relationships with your children and with your spouse. And I think a lot of it comes back to just like we've talked about, decreasing the stress, helping build that trust, and helping have a safe zone for both of you then to explore with each other.
I think it's if you're struggling in your marriage or if you're looking for a more heightened relationship, I think it has to one of you has to become vulnerable. And
Hmm.
so the conversation just needs to start, or if it's the physical acts of just starting to take some things off of each other's plates, or to simply say I love you, or to have that physical touch, I think is just some of those small things, because sometimes the words are really difficult to say, but your actions can also speak volumes.
Well, that's what my grandma used to always say, and she had a great marriage, was actions always speak louder than
Mhm,
words because people are always watching what you do
mhm.
and not so much what you're saying. So we appreciate you guys so much for being on here with this one and having a wonderful February with us. I really hope that these last 4 episodes have helped basically help you learn how to relearn your spouse
Mhm.
and relearn the love and the intimacy and the fun you can have with the person you were and the person that you had met. And there's nothing better than those points that Dr. Julie truly made there was what were you like when you guys first met and what were the things that you found most attractive at that time and how do you get back to those things if they're not there anymore, right?
Vulnerability.
So what do you think people should leave below in the comments this time around, Dr. Julie?
We would love to hear what is one takeaway that you've had from our podcast this month
Mm-hmm.
of, if it's learning your spouse's love languages, or that, okay, I'm committed to becoming a little bit more vulnerable, or if you need to start showing yourself a little bit of self love.
Right. I love it. All right. So go out there, share this with as many people as you can. Spread this around. Subscribe if you're first time listening. We really appreciate you being here. Smash that thumbs up below too on the YouTube channel. And we will see you all next week. Take care. Go out there. Get it done. Bye, everyone.